Welcome back to the Linux series. In this video, we are going to start a new module, which is the Linux administration. In this module, we will talk about users and groups, Linux permissions, process management, services and logs, and package management. So in this video, we are going to start users and groups. We are going to learn about the importance of a root user and the sudo command, and why we don't need to use and log in as a root user, why we have to avoid, and how we have to create and manage different users, how we can add a new user, how we can create their passwords, and how we can create groups and identities. So, and if we talk about mainly about the concept, every Linux system has a root super user that can do anything, plus regular users who each have a numeric UID, user ID. Users belong to groups. Each has a group ID, which is how Linux grants shared access without handing out root. So the golden rule is the least privilege. You log in as a normal user and borrow root powers only for the one command that needs them, using a sudo command. That's far safer than logging in as a root user, where a single typo can wipe out the system. So that is why the importance of users in terms of permission is very important, how you have to log in and how you have to create users. And we are now going to learn about different commands. Those will be sudo, useradd, like how we can add a new user, how we can add a command usermod, which is a user modification, and how we can create password using a passwd command. And similarly, how we can check which user is belong to which group, and how we can append the groups to the user. So now let's start with our users and group commands and permissions. So I'm going to open my terminal where I have to where I'm going to log in into my Linux server. I will do SSH. As you know, if you're following this series, you know we can set up Linux in Windows, Mac, or we can also use Linux Playground in our website. On the website, there is option free playground. So what you have to do, make sure just refresh, and then you can start this terminal in the browser itself and you can do the practice. But I will always recommend you to try out only like the best practices using a virtual server, which give you more capabilities and you can learn in a perfect way. So I am going to SSH first of all into my Linux server, and then we are going to practice users and groups. So what I have to do, I am just going to my AWS console. I can also show you if you have the AWS. I have an EC2 instance already created, and that we created in our, I think, first 2-3 videos where we have instances. I have instance running, so I'm going to connect with it. As a SSH client, I will just copy this point number 3 command, so I can go into and do the prompt. I have to go into particular folder, and next what I have to do, I have to command this example command, and then we have to just SSH into the server. Let's go. Now as we are in our Linux server, we are now logged in, we have done the SSH. The next thing is we are going to learn about and know about how the users work. We run our first command, id, which will tell about the current user. What is the user ID? It is telling 1000 user is Ubuntu, And the second is the group ID, which is 1000 and which is also part of groups. If you see, this is a group which is part of this group, and this is the other permissions and all these things. So now we have learn about the what ID can do and tell us some information, which is important in terms of understanding what this command can provide the information. And next is, if we know who am I, which will tell us which user you are logged in. If you know which groups this user is belong to. So as a Ubuntu user, I am belong to these multiple groups. This is a sudo group which has root permissions and ADM, DIP. So these are the groups and different permissions. So we know that user is part of this group. So first of all, we are going to create a new user. We know there is already an Ubuntu user, but we want to create a user, and for that we need a domain command. For this, what we can do, this is a command. Okay, what this command will do, sudo as a root user, we are going to add a user add, and then we are going to tell make a home folder for this user, and also we are going to create a user name deploy. We can give any name to the user, and bin bash, the user will be ready. And so this command, when we are going to add up this command, and it is going to tell the which kind of shell is needed and by default assigned to this user, and then just run. And okay, so the user is now created. Next, if we want to set a password for this user, we can run a command passwd, and we can go with tell the name, and we can enter the password. Okay, now I have created the password. No, this is a basic user is created. Now, if we have to assign a group, let's first see which group this user is part of. We can go to check. First of all, we can sudo su deploy. Now you can see I have just run a simple command to change the user. So what we did, now I am as a deploy user. So if I have to see which groups I am part of. So as a deploy user, I'm only part of one group, which is deploy. I am not part of the sudo group. So let's learn about that, how we can assign a group to this user. For that, what we have to do, we are going to attach a sudo group to this user. First of all, user modified, we are going to modify this user, which is a deploy user, and we are going to append a group, which is a sudo. So let's run this command, and after, now you can see one thing that is a learning point. When we try to attach this group, we were not able to do, because we are now logged in as a deploy user, because deploy user does not have the permission to attach itself a sudo user. So we want a root user who has a permission that can assign these permission to the deploy users, or we can exit it. Okay, so sometime if the user is not ready, what we can do, no, we are back into the Ubuntu user. We just did the exit and we come back to the original user. So here, now we are going to run the command, which was assigning the group to the deploy user. Sudo user modified, append a group, sudo to the deploy. Now we can see the group is attached. When the group is attached, and if we have to inspect that user, we can see ID deploy. So now we can see the sudo group has attached some sort of permission 27, and the user is now updated. So next, what we have to do, we have now inspected the user. Next is, let's see where it is in the database. We can run a command and now we can see the grep. It will tell us in the user database where this deploy user is. This is the line and telling these information at that line. Like if you remember, the ID of Ubuntu user was 1000. And when we add a new user, it will have an increment. It will be 1001. So this will be the ID of that new user. So, and next is, if we have to learn about, let me clear it, we can learn the next command, which is knowing how many groups are into the sudo group, how many users are into the sudo group. So we can see that Ubuntu and the deploy, these two users are into the sudo group. We can debug it. Mostly what we have to do when we are handling the production system or we have multiple team members, and we can see how many users have a sudo permission, and if we have created multiple groups, and we can look into it which team member is in which group. So next is sudo whoami. So what we do, sometime when we know which user it is, it just tell us Ubuntu. But if we have to know about another user, it will automatically print sudo user deploy whoami. So it will tell the username. So that is very simple. This was all about that how we can use users and permission. So to practice, you guys, what you have to practice, which is some domains, you have to create a app user, add it to new web admins group, confirm the membership with ID, and runs a command as that user with sudo -u. So you have to do this task. And for the cheat sheet, if you want to remember, like if we have to just go and recall these commands, what we learn about ID whoami, which is telling the user ID, group ID, username, and then we can add a useradd command, which create a user with the home directory. Then we have learned about user, how we can modify a user to attach a group with it, and also the how we can create the password using a passwd command. And then we also learn about how we can run user as if you have to run a command with a particular user, then we can use sudo user deploy, and whatever the command we want to execute, we can also do that. So that was all about users and group. And in the next video, we are going to talk about Linux permissions. And so if you are getting help from this series, you can use the GitHub repo, which is available in this video description. And you can also read out the slides on website, use the playground. And if you have any questions, ask me in the comments. And you can also like or subscribe if you think the content is helping you to learn Linux. So I will see you in the next video.